Have you ever looked at a massive systemic failure? And, I mean, I'm talking about rolling blackouts, completely broken logistics networks, or just, total political gridlock.
Yeah, the stuff that just seems unfixable.
Right. And you look at it and think to yourself, changing the leader isn't going to fix this.
Oh, not at all.
Because the whole machine is fundamentally broken.
It is literally like trying to fix a blown engine by putting a new coat of paint on the car.
Yeah.
You can swap out the driver, you can upgrade the tires, but if the vehicle mechanically cannot generate forward motion, you just aren't going anywhere.
Exactly. Well, welcome to this deep dive. Our mission today is to explore a framework that tackles that exact problem.
And it's a fascinating one.
It really is.
Yeah.
We are looking at a radical architectural blueprint. It's titled Becker's Diamond, a new operating system for governance in South Africa.
Specifically version 3, right? From April 2026.
Yes, version 3. And I want to be super clear right up front. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
This isn't just another political critique complaining of the state of the world.
Far from it.
Yeah, it is a highly technical geometric blueprint for a completely new way to run a society.
The material here is, it's incredibly dense and detailed.
Oh, yeah.
We're looking at a comprehensive framework developed by Becker, and it's just filled with these intricate geometric diagrams and system maps.
Which are wild to look at, by the way.
They really are. And the core argument he makes is that tweaking policy or, electing a new political party is entirely insufficient.
Right.
He argues that human organization requires an entirely new structural geometry to actually survive the complexity of the modern world.
And while this document is specifically centered on South Africa, looking toward its 2029 elections, the insights here are a massive aha moment for anyone.
Oh, absolutely. Globally applicable.
Right. Because if you care about how your business is structured or how your local community operates or honestly, just how human beings collaborate without driving each other crazy.
Which is a daily struggle.
Right. There is something in here for you. But to build a new system, we have to start by diagnosing exactly why the current one is failing.
Yeah, you had to find the root of the rot.
Exactly. And the analysis here starts with the idea that the world has simply run out of political models.
It's a deep exhaustion. Like an exhaustion of the systems themselves.
Yeah.
And the framework offers a very impartial, systemic critique of our current models. Like, it examines Western liberal democracy and notes that, well, while foundationally sound in its ideals structurally, it has become highly fragmented.
Fragmented how?
Well, authority is so diffuse that decision-making just slows to a crawl. And that leaves the system highly vulnerable to capture by, concentrated economic interests.
Okay, and just a quick note for you listening, we aren't taking any political sides here.
No, not at all.
We are strictly reporting on Becker's analysis of these structural geometries, just looking at the mechanics.
Right, because the analysis then shifts right over to socialist tendencies. And these models often try to correct those democratic inefficiencies, but they do so by becoming way over-centralized.
Right, pulling all the power to the center.
Exactly, which reduces agility and creates these massive bottlenecks in how resources are actually allocated on the ground.
So if a centralized state is too rigid and a fragmented democracy is too slow, isn't the obvious modern answer a coalition government?
You'd think so.
Because we see those popping up everywhere right now. Everyone just shares the power at the top.
In theory, yes. But Becker points out that structurally, coalitions usually devolve into just short-term political bargaining.
Oh, because the shade hasn't changed.
Exactly. Because the underlying system hasn't changed, you get unstable leadership, where sheer political survival, just staying in power, takes precedence over actually delivering public value.
And this leads us to the root cause.
Yeah.
Becker identifies a single shared flaw across all of these supposedly different systems.
Yeah.
A centralized state, a liberal democracy, a coalition. They actually all share the exact same underlying geometry.
The pyramid.
The pyramid.
It is the default architecture of our entire institutional imagination. From ancient empires to modern corporate org charts, we build pyramids.
We really do. It's everywhere.
Pyramids are inherently hierarchical. They centralize power at the absolute apex. They assume that progress only moves vertically, bottom to top.
Right.
And because of that structure, they inherently reward loyalty and alignment over actual demonstrated competence.
If you think about it, a pyramid is like, it's like a corporate Jenga tower.
Oh, like that.
Yeah, where all the decision-making weight sits entirely at the top block.
Right.
And if that apex fails, whether through incompetence or state capture, the entire structure is compromised. The base of the pyramid is totally dependent on the top holding it all together.
Let's test that against the real-world symptoms South Africa is facing today.
Let's do it.
Because the analysis ties this structural fragility directly to what happens on the ground. Take the concept of cadre deployment.
I want to pause on that term, actually, because it gets thrown around a lot in the news. What does it actually mean mechanically inside a pyramid?
Well, because a pyramid relies entirely on the stability of the apex, leaders at the top are structurally forced to ensure the tower doesn't tip over.
Okay.
So they use cadre deployment, which means putting loyalists, people they trust implicitly, into highly technical, strategic roles.
So they aren't necessarily the best engineers.
Exactly. They do this to guarantee political alignment and protect the apex, but the structural trade-off is that they sacrifice competence.
Which means the people tasked with running the country's engineering and logistics, they just aren't equipped to actually deliver.
Right. And when you hollow out the institutional capacity to maintain the pyramid, you get the visible collapse of delivery systems.
Like load shedding.
Exactly. You get load shedding, the total failure of the national energy grid. You get failing rail networks. You get collapsing municipalities.
It's all connected.
Becker argues these aren't isolated sectoral problems. They are the predictable failure mode of a top-down pyramid structure trying to operate in a complex, fast-moving environment that it was just never designed to handle.
And don't forget the human cost of this. The document points out that this structure leads to massive youth economic exclusion.
Yes.
The pyramid is so obsessed with protecting the top that there's no coordinated system to integrate the vast human potential just sitting at the bottom.
That is the core issue. So if the pyramid is structurally doomed in a modern world, how do we abandon a shape that is so deeply entrenched in human psychology?
Well, there is a foundational principle in the text from the systems theorist Buckminster Fuller that addresses this perfectly.
I love this quote.
So good. He said, "You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete."
You don't reform the pyramid.
No.
You replace it. And that introduces the new geometry, Becker's diamond.
Okay, here we go.
Where the pyramid concentrates power, the diamond distributes coordination. Where the pyramid separates the people who think at the top from the people who do at the bottom,
Right.
the diamond integrates them. It creates what the author calls a middle strong society.
Which is super interesting. I notice a connection the text makes here to C.K. Prahalad.
Oh, yeah.
He's famous for his economic work on the bottom of the pyramid, basically identifying that the massive population at the base is an untapped capability rather than a burden.
The framework builds heavily on Prahalad's work, but it suggests he didn't quite take it far enough.
How so?
Well, Prahalad wanted to activate the base, but he still accepted the pyramid itself as the immovable structure of society.
Ah, I see.
Becker's argument is that simply activating the bottom of a pyramid just creates a heavier base for a fragile top.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You have to scrap the shape entirely.
Okay, but I have to play devil's advocate for a second.
Go for it.
Why specifically a diamond? If the goal is just to distribute power and connect people better, why not use a web or a network? I mean, modern tech companies use matrix structures all the time to stay agile. Why commit to a diamond?
What's fascinating here is if you consider the mechanics of those shapes. A network, like a spider web, perfectly describes connections and flow, right?
Yeah.
But it lacks sequence, it lacks direction. A web cannot embed accountability because there is no mandatory structural path for a process to follow.
Okay.
And a matrix describes intersections of authority, but it lacks a learning loop. It's essentially just a static snapshot of an org chart.
So a matrix doesn't move.
Yeah.
It just sits there on a whiteboard.
Exactly. A diamond, however, isn't just a static shape. Becker argues that the diamond is the natural geometry that emerges when you map a cyclical, accountable process onto human behavior.
It's an engine.
It represents an engine, yes, not just a building.
Let's get into how that engine actually runs, because there's an image early in the text that shows our current reality of governance.
Yes, the linear one.
Right. It portrays it as a flat, linear timeline. It goes goal, then plan, then do, then evaluate, then feedback.
Just a straight line.
And the text describes this linear approach as random, disconnected, and ultimately leading to conflict.
Well, in a linear timeline, the people who set the goal at the very beginning, they have already moved on to the next crisis by the time you get to feedback at the end.
Oh, that is so true.
The thinkers and the doers are structurally isolated from each other. So the diamond fixes this by operating as a continuous 8-stage execution cycle.
Okay, walk us through how a task actually moves through this diamond shape.
Okay, so it starts at the top point with task.
Task.
This is where you define the clarity of purpose. From there, you move down the right side of the shape to plan,
Got it.
which is aligning your resources and your strategy.
Wait, before we go all the way to the bottom of the diamond, what happens next? Because usually, in business or government, after we plan something, we just jump straight to doing it.
And that is exactly where the execution usually falls apart. In the diamond, after you plan, you move to develop. You do not implement the plan yet. You build the human and technical capability required to execute it first.
To train the people.
Yes. Only after the capability is developed do you reach the bottom point.
Right.
Implement. Actually delivering the project in the real world.
Okay, so we've traveled from the top point down the right side to the bottom point. What happens on the way back up?
You move up the left side of the diamond. First is assess measuring what actually happened against the original metrics.
Okay.
Then you reflect, which is understanding deeply why it happened.
Right.
Next is lessons, integrating that newfound knowledge into your systems. And finally, you arrive back at the top left. Character.
Character.
This represents the building of institutional integrity over time, and that character must be secured before you are allowed to define the next task at the very top.
Here is what I find fascinating about this. Let's use an example. In standard government, a politician says, build a power plant. Right. That's the task.
Yep.
A contractor tries to build it, which is implement. We totally skip develop, meaning we don't bother training engineers first or checking if we have the skills.
Exactly.
And we almost always skip reflect at the end. This cycle is like, it's like a smartwatch for governance.
A smartwatch.
Yeah, like how an Apple Watch buzzes to remind you to stand up. This cycle forces a systemic mandatory debrief after every single action. It takes raw, painful lessons and structurally forces them to turn into long-term institutional character.
I love that analogy. And the true brilliance of this geometry is what Becker calls the theory of opposites.
Okay, what is that?
Because this 8-step process is mapped onto a geometric diamond, each stage creates the exact criteria by which the opposite stage directly across the shape will be judged.
Okay, think about your own job for a second if you're listening to this. Have you ever been handed an assignment where the instructions from your boss were basically just, make it pop?
Oh, the worst.
Right. And then 3 months later, they assess your performance and tell you that you failed. That is a structural breakdown. How does the diamond fix that?
Look at the geometry. The plan stage sits on the top right.
Okay.
Draw a line straight across the diamond, and its direct opposite on the bottom left is assess. You structurally cannot assess an outcome unless the plan was mathematically clear. The plan itself creates the metrics for the assessment.
They hold each other accountable?
Precisely.
And what about the top and the bottom points?
The task at the very top is judged by the character that results from it. If a leader defines a corrupt or poorly thought out task, it builds corrupt institutional character.
Wow.
The geometry forces continuous accountability into the daily cycle, rather than waiting for an election every 5 years to see if things worked out.
Okay, so we have this 8-step engine for getting things done. But how on earth do you map that onto an entire country of millions of people, diverse cultures, and massive industries?
That requires what the text calls the red diamond alignment.
The red diamond.
Yeah. Becker takes that 8-step cycle and maps it onto the 4 interconnected spheres of society, basically the 4 points of the shape.
Okay, what sits at those 4 points?
At the top is politics. This is the sphere of vision, identity, and direction. These are the architects.
The architects, okay.
On the right is economics. This is the sphere of exchange, resourcing, and capability. These are the systems engineers.
Got it.
At the bottom is the physical environment. This is where execution meets the hard constraints of reality, the infrastructure, the power grid. These are the builders.
Okay.
And on the left is the social milieu. This is the sphere of people, culture, norms, and meaning. This is the community.
Okay, when you look at those 4 points, diagnosing South Africa's current breakdowns becomes incredibly clear.
Fascinating.
It is literally a break in this specific flow. The politics at the top define an intent, let's say, fixing the energy grid.
All right.
Then the economics on the right throw billions of dollars at it. But it fails at the bottom in the physical environment because there's no technical capability to build it.
The develop stage was skipped.
Exactly. So the grid collapses. And finally, the social sphere on the left is quite literally left in the dark, getting endlessly frustrated because no lessons are ever learned, and the cycle just spins in a broken loop.
And to understand why that break happens, the framework introduces a vertical dimension.
Like a 3D aspect.
Yeah, imagine looking at the diamond in 3D. The deep grounding foundation of the entire geometric structure is accountability.
Accountability.
Sustained, measurable consequences for every action. And only from that deep foundation of accountability can the top of the diamond reach abundance, which is growth, innovation, and opportunity.
So abundance isn't just something a country stumbles into if they happen to elect the right person.
No.
It's the mathematical result of accountability.
Exactly right. And that vertical axis of accountability and abundance, it's balanced horizontally. On one side, you have adaptability, the system's ability to respond to shocks and learn. And on the other side, anticipation, the ability to foresee and plan. In a pyramid, you only have a top and a bottom. In the diamond, every force structurally balances another force.
Structurally, logically, this makes a ton of sense.
It really does on paper.
Right, but a blueprint is just a piece of paper until you actually build the house.
Yeah.
How does a nation actually transition from a pyramid to a diamond? The author is explicitly looking toward the 2029 elections as a horizon here.
The transition works because the diamond is fractal.
Fractal.
Yeah, meaning the geometry scales perfectly whether you are looking through a microscope or a telescope.
Okay, so you don't start huge.
No, you do not attempt to build one giant national diamond overnight. You build a local diamond at the community level.
Right.
Then an operational diamond at the town or municipal level. Then a coordination diamond for the province. And finally, a strategic diamond at the national level.
So it's a network of capability.
Exactly.
There is a beautifully descriptive image in the text that defines the ultimate goal of all these connected diamonds. It calls it a murmuration of humanity.
That's such a great phrase.
It is. Instead of linear, random competition, society moves in perfect sync, powered by the free flow of information. It's like moving from a rigid marching band.
Or one bad conductor ruins the entire show.
Exactly. Moving from that to a massive flock of birds, the flock dynamically shifts, adapts, and turns together in the sky. No single bird is the boss, but the system itself is incredibly intelligent.
But moving from a rigid hierarchy to that kind of distributed coordination, it requires a very careful, phased approach.
Right, you can't just flip a switch.
The framework lays out a realistic 4-phase implementation pathway to get there without, collapsing the country in the process.
Let's walk through those mechanics. How do you start phase 1?
So phase 1 covers the first 0 to 6 months. This is strictly about proof of execution. You do not try to change the whole country. You identify specific failing node Shay, a single collapsed municipal water treatment plant.
Okay, keep it small.
You apply the 8-step diamond cycle strictly to that plant. You develop the capability, you implement the fix, you assess the results. You prove the geometry actually fixes the water.
Show, don't tell.
Exactly.
And what is happening alongside that?
That leads to phase 2, which runs in parallel. It focuses on social and community alignment.
What does that look like?
You have to teach foundational systems literacy in schools and households. Citizens actually need to understand how to operate within a cyclical, accountable system.
Oh, I see. You essentially have to train the population on how to use the new operating system before you delete the old one.
Right, otherwise there's chaos. Then phase 3 is system synchronization, and that runs from 6 to 18 months.
Okay.
Once those local nodes are functioning, you start connecting them. You link the municipal water diamond to the provincial infrastructure diamond, ensuring the planning and assessment stages communicate.
They start talking to each other.
Yes. And finally, phase 4, from 18 months onward, is scaling the constellation. You scale the governance system out, actively replacing the old, top-heavy political structures with these functional, competence-based nodes.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now?
Good question.
You might not be tasked with redesigning a national government by 2029, but the Diamond Framework forces you to hold a mirror up to the structures you do control.
Absolutely.
It forces you to look at your own business, your own team, and frankly, your own daily routines. Are you operating as a fragile pyramid? Are you rewarding loyalty over actual competence?
Are you hoarding all the power?
Right. Are you hoarding all the decision-making weight at the top, leaving your team totally dependent and vulnerable if you step away?
Yeah.
Or are you building a resilient diamond where execution is constantly tied to reflection, and every task you complete systematically builds your long-term character?
Which brings us to a final thought to consider, building off that vertical axis we explored earlier. We are deeply conditioned by the pyramid model to view abundance as a prize we win through aggressive competition.
By fighting to the top.
Right, by hoarding power at the absolute apex of the hierarchy. But if Becker's geometry is correct, the true structural foundation of abundance is actually accountability.
Wow.
What would happen tomorrow if you stopped trying to climb to the top of the pyramid and instead focus entirely on strengthening the feedback loops in your own daily cycles?
Stop climbing, start cycling. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Becker's diamond. Keep questioning the structures around you, and we'll catch you on the next one.